Okay, everybody, good evening. My name is Ira, and I will be having today a little session about how to teach reading and how to use the basic approach in reading, in teaching reading in English as second language, which is phonics. We will be talking a lot today about phonics, we will be using a lot of different terminology, so please try to stay focused, try to understand what exactly we are speaking about, how to differentiate the terms. Maybe if you want, you can share some of your experience of teaching phonics or teaching readings to young learners or grown-ups. So we will be beginning now. A few technical moments. During the whole entire session, I would like you all to keep your microphones off, unless you really want to tell something, want to share something. Otherwise, I am muting all of your microphones right now so that there are no extra sounds that are distracting, or there are no extra sounds that are making the quality of this video and of this conference worse. So let's just keep it this way. If you want to unmute, you can try that, but I would really like you not to do so. So anyway, we will be beginning on speaking about phonics, because we hear this term all the time. What is phonics? What it's all about? So we will begin. Let's start. Just to begin with, a few words about why phonics and why is this topic is really bothering me and why it's so hard to be teaching it. Just first, I will tell a few things about myself. My name is Ira, just like I mentioned before. I am a green country teacher and methodologist. I work with some other organizations as well, giving speeches and training other teachers, English language teachers, I mean. I am one of the editors and a curriculum coordinator for 24 Easy Steps books by Green Country, those books that we are publishing. I am also a Green Country trainer, which means that I work with other teachers, just like yourselves, or maybe some of you aren't teachers, maybe some of you are going to become ones in a little bit. But I do work with teachers who are only coming to Green Country and are going through all those trainings. That's a part of my job as well. This is why I've been learning a lot just during my teaching. So a lot of my knowledge comes not much from textbooks, but more from experience. So that is why I will be mostly sharing my experience. And one more thing is that I am a co-author of ESL books for teenagers, which we are adjusting from Green Forest books. But mainly the curriculum which I am working with designing is concerned with primary school learning. So I will be talking a lot today about young learners. Just like you might know, Green Country English School, which is mentioned right here, this is a school for children. So if you are working with adults, you might be having slightly different approaches. You might be having different issues, different struggles. We will be discussing them as well. But just remember that mainly it will be concerning teaching English to young learners, children, especially primary school, because that's the skill that comes very, very first. Other than me, there is also another person in this meeting. Her name is Katya. She is also a Green Country worker, a colleague of mine. She will be trying to respond to your messages. If you have some questions, it's better not to be saying them, but to write them in the chat. Katya will be sorting those messages. If this is something she can respond to, she will give you a quick response so that it's faster. If this is something worth sharing at the end, we will be talking about this at the end of the presentation. But once again, if you have any questions during the whole conference, during the whole webinar, please open the chat window. There is a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Write a message. You can write it to everyone, or there is also another option, write it privately to somebody. And if you're getting responses from certain Katya, keep in mind that this is a Green Country worker and she's in charge of responding to your messages as well. Okay, so once again, we will be talking about teaching phonics to young learners. So what is phonics all about? That's a really, really great term, phonics. We hear it all the time. Everywhere we go, it's like phonics, phonics, teaching phonics. Today I have a phonics lesson. Phonics in ESL. You see those headlines everywhere, and you kind of understand what this means, because just by the look of the word itself, phonics has to deal with phonetics, which is the study of sounds and pronunciation, and also with phonology a little bit. So it does have to do with sounds, but it's a very specific approach that I'm pretty sure you all are using to a certain extent. So I have this ABC cube here in the corner because it technically represents what phonics is all about. Phonics is about combining what you hear into what you write and what you see. So this is kind of like a barrier between written language and spoken language. These two huge areas of English, spoken and written language, it builds a connection between writing and reading, between hearing, listening, and also saying. So that's what phonics is all about. It's about combining spoken and written. To be more specific, if you look into a definition of phonics, what phonics is all about, you will most often find the description or the definition that says something like this: teaching, reading, and writing. So here we have two skills, teaching and writing, by demonstrating the connection between phonemes and graphemes. And what are those? Phonemes and graphemes. Really cool terms. We will be repeating them today a lot, so let's try to clear this out just so we are on the same stage. Phonemes and graphemes, and what's the connection between them? So just by looking at the word, we understand that phonemes deals with phonetics. We often might say that phoneme is technically almost what is the sound. So the sound and graphemes are letters that represent certain sounds, pretty much, and the connections between them. So that's what makes this very difficult, because I don't know about you, maybe you have different experiences, but my experience is that 100% of my students are native Ukrainian or Russian speakers. And if we look at Ukrainian or Russian language, they are pretty simple. In most cases, one letter in writing represents one sound, one phoneme, let's put it this way. So you have one grapheme, one phoneme, they correspond all the time, no problem whatsoever. And they do manage their native language pretty well, but when it starts to learning, reading, and writing in English, it becomes a little bit more challenging, because children start understanding, so I learned this letter and my teacher told me that this letter makes sound a, but here in this word it's a, like in art, for example. Or here in this word, it also has some other pronunciation. Here in this word, we don't pronounce this letter at all. So how do you understand that? This gets more and more complicated every time, because as the students are growing and as their vocabulary, their lexicon expands, the variety of phonemes and graphemes that they will encounter is so huge that it's really, really hard for them to draw the connection between them. That's how English language works. So again, we know that it has 26 letters, right? Pretty simple, even fewer than in Ukrainian. So looks manageable. At the same time, we say that in English language, we have 44 phonemes. And those 44 phonemes aren't the same all the time. We say that there are also 120 graphemes. So this is how it works. For example, we are talking about phoneme that is represented by sound A. Again, A. So you can see this in great variety of words. For example, you can have A, it's a diphthong, by the way. You can have A in play. Oops, I apologize, this is the wrong language. Again, trying to type here. You can have A in play. You can have A in playing, like that. And you can have A in game, like this. So in all these cases, we have the same phoneme A, but it is represented by 3 different graphemes. In the first case, it's represented by letters AY. Here you can see that, the same grapheme, letters AY. In the next case, it's represented by letters AI. And in the third case, it's even more difficult. There is A here and E in the end, which makes this a sound A. So how is a 6 or 7 year old, how is a 7-year-old child supposed to understand, or 8-year-old child supposed to understand this whole great variety of phonemes and graphemes, and remember, or if you want, memorize all these connections? That's close to impossible, but somehow you, somehow me, and all the other students that were learning English managed to cope with this. So that is why our children are also, I mean students of ours, or children as well, they are also capable of that, and they can manage that as well. So I would like you now to take a look at some of the phonemes, graphemes, and all the other things in English language. Just a minute. So we say that in English language there are phonetic patterns. And patterns is the easier way to teach children how to say that. So basically you show them some letter or a combination of letters that represent a certain phoneme, and you repeat it many times, you show it many times, and in this way students try to remember it, and they remember this relationship, that this connection makes this sound. It's very easy if you have simple letters, but if you have something more difficult, it might take time. For example, we are talking about sound sh. Everybody knows the sound, pretty easy, represented very often by 2 basic letters. So you have sh, all right? And if you will be showing your students this sh and sound sh, and showing this separately, and then in many other words, you have some chances that in the future they will just remember it, that they've seen it somewhere before, this sh, that it is represented by 2 different letters, but the same phoneme sh. Sometimes it's represented by other letters, like just s, but this will come later. The key to teaching phonics is that you don't need to push, like teach them the same phoneme with all different kinds of graphemes at the same time. That's impossible and will only make students confused. But patterns are important because there is some system in a pattern. The students see it, the students can say it, they hear it, they repeat, and that's how they remember. Here on the screen, I pretty much put randomly different types of patterns. So they even sometimes overlap. Like one part is also can be considered this and also can be considered that. Because there is no like strict, very specific division into all these vowels and into all the sounds and phonemes. We just need to understand that sometimes they will be used and viewed from different perspectives. We have short vowels. This is something that students learn at the very beginning. You know, like and stuff like that. Short vowels that are represented by one vowel usually. I have some of them here. Sorry. No. Some of them are here. So short vowels are like met. So for the first one, we have sound met, hop, oh, that's the wrong one. Then we have bet, hat, fish, gym, short e, on, so, all different kind of things, but that's a short sound that you pronounce pretty quickly. Next thing they start learning is long vowels like oo, ow. They are also, some of them are also called diphthongs. There is a message from me. Somebody is saying it's good to use cards with words and pictures representing the particular sound or a combination of sounds. It is true, I absolutely agree if you have those cards. What I find more effective though is videos and chants. Much more effective, and I will tell you why in a little bit. Of course, you may agree or disagree, but yes, it is effective, I agree. So these are long vowels. Other than long vowels, we have some other things. One moment. So like we mentioned, there is something called schwa, and the schwa is the whole other thing that I would like to dedicate a few minutes to. So let's skip schwa and go to some other things. There are controlled vowels. So the sound R is tricky itself because it's absolutely different than what we have in Ukrainian or Russian or some other Slavic languages. But when it comes in combination with other letters, it gets even more complicated. So you can have something like this: chair, hair, very, hairy, pear, and other than that, it's also different in different accents. So you can be saying this differently in British accent and differently in American accent. But when you have that R comes into combination with some other kind of vowel, you have the whole different sound. Chair, care, very, and then British people will be saying slightly different, like chair, care, very, like skipping this R sound at all. So that's the other, that's the other challenge. Other things are diphthongs. Diphthongs are tricky because technically you have two sounds, two vowels that are combined together. I think I have some of them here. Oh no, not here. Simple consonants is other thing that they hear. And once again, we are not saying here that we're teaching them letters, because like you see, look here, for example, at sound k, there is sound k and different words that have the sound: camera, kitten, school, truck. And in every case, the sound is represented by a different grapheme. Like here it's letter C, letter K, combination of letters CH, and here it's combination of letters CK. So once again, this is the list not of letters, it's a list of phonemes. Now let me erase this for a moment very quickly. One moment. The list of phonemes. But these are the phonemes you are very likely to teach your students at the very beginning, because they are called simple consonants. They are almost always learned in the beginning just by one letter. Another thing we have is complex consonants and digraphs. I don't think today we've discussed what the term digraph means, but this has to be distinguished clearly from diphthongs. Digraph, so prefix di usually means that there is two of something, right? So di and graphs, graphing, it's like writing from Latin. So technically we say that there are two pieces of writing. There are two letters that represent one phoneme, like letters C and H together, chair. Like we have, for example, letters T and H together, the or the. They represent the whole other phoneme, digraphs. And Diphthongs is a different thing. Diphthongs is the other way around. When you have two vowels combined in one. That's the other thing that we will be discussing. I hope it gets easier when we get to practice, because right now it's hard to differentiate. Okay, so these are some phonemic patterns. We didn't discuss some of them. Let me erase it. But I would also like to get back to schwa. Here are drawings. Complex consonant. And look, here in this classification, also you have in the very end, we have something that is called Vowel Consonant E. Technically, it overlaps with a term diphthongs because they are similar. What we're talking about here is, for example, how letter E in the end gets silent and makes the other sound different. For example, you can have the word tap, or you can have the word tape, right? One letter changes the sound and the phoneme, and here we understand that this sound that is created here, it is a diphthong. So you see, in different textbooks and in different literature, you will see different approaches to naming the phonemes and to like teaching them to students. They will come from different levels, and they will be having different names. And what's even more difficult, that in many textbooks you will not see the name for this. So you will see that your students today are learning a certain sound, but in the textbook it will be not mentioned that it is either a diphthong or this combination vowel consonant E or something else, because that's another tendency in English second language teaching, that we're trying not to overload the students with terms. Like, you don't need those 6-year-olds to be telling you, oh yes, I know, that's a diphthong. Yes, that's how I read it, it's a diphthong. Of course not, nonsense. They don't need to be using those terms. What they need to be doing is understanding the pattern, just the pattern. If they see letter A and in the end letter E, we teach them that, whoop, some magic happens. E makes a different sound to that. That's how we teach children or even adults. We don't say that it's a diphthong, phonemes, graphemes. It's hard to follow even for you. I'm not saying about students. And about schwa, I want to show you a little video. I'm sorry, because this video will be mostly in Ukrainian, only with some reference to English, but it was the video from our colleagues from Rainforest. It's not mine. I will just show it to you. It's a part of the video, perfect pronunciation in 8 useful tips. But one part of them is about sound schwa. So let's watch. Just let me find the correct spot. One moment. I know you can't hear it right now, but you will hear it in a moment. A second.
Інвестиції в свою англійську і переглянути той плейліст за посиланням нижче.
Okay, so here it comes about schwa. That's the important part of the video.
Навчіться вимовляти шва. Шва – це центральний звук англійської мови. Центральний, тому що він буквально знаходиться всередині роду. А зараз ми навчимось з вами його робити. Уявіть собі, що ви ідіот, якого щось питаєте, ви взагалі нічого не розумієте. Це виглядає десь так. Він присутній в словах girl, bird, turn. Так звана коротка версія цього звуку – це і є шва. Він з'являється майже скрізь, де голосна не наголошена. Тим самим допомагає створити ритм англійської мови. It is a cake. Артикль «e» перетворюється на «e». Так само і прийменник of. I had a cup of tea in the morning. Також закінчений «er», наприклад, water, developer. В деяких позиціях в слові він може бути більш схожим на «а», в деяких на «о» чи на «е», але ви вже знаєте, як його правильно робити. Не те, що він схожий, це результат взаємодії з іншими звуками в слові чи реченні. А далі про те...
Okay, so that's basically what they had to say about schwa. This is a very tricky one because in many, I would say, textbooks, in many resources, you will not see this schwa and what this is, because technically there is no specific definition. But what we do understand is that it is present and it is useful to tell this to your students, because what we have as an issue of teaching English to someone who is original, like Ukrainian or Russian speaker, is that they tend to have these vowels very similar to Ukrainian, like o, not like o or sometimes, but very, very similar to Ukrainian o. And in English, there is technically no o. There are some other phonemes similar, but not really an o. That is why telling your students to maybe imagine that there is something inside their mouths, and they don't need to be very, like, you know, very strict doing these moves, very accurate, I would say. But imagining there is something inside that makes the sound, or you have something in your mouth that keeps you from keeping it shut. Of course, it's a tricky exercise, but maybe this will develop this ability to do the schwa and not do the something like father, but father. Instead, imagining that there is something in your mouth and doing this schwa, because schwa is present, like she said, in very different places. It is in different phonemes. It's not even a specific sound. It's a part of something, and it's almost everywhere. And it's like it's not o or e or something. It's different, and that's what makes English English. A very, very different kind of schwa. That's what I really wanted to share with you. Try to do the schwa with your students, and if it helps, just I don't know, maybe pass this experience on to someone else who will be thankful for it, that you're sharing some of the schwa. Okay, so, and like we said, there are all these kinds of diphthongs, vowels, consonants, this kind of long vowel, short vowel, there are digraphs. And how do you teach this child to read? Where do you start? What begins? What comes first? Do you even teach them that? Or maybe you just teach them letters? Where to start? And again, I want to say that there are different approaches depending on who you're working with. So sometimes you have students, tongue twisters and phonemic warm-ups can be used as used to train the correct articulation. Absolutely agree, Andrew. Thank you for this valuable comment. Yes, it does help, certainly. I have not seen a tongue twister with schwa, but I promise I will start Googling for one right after the session. Maybe I will find something fun. Okay, anyways, but now where to start? It depends on who you're working with and what approach you are using. For example, sometimes you might have students that do speak English already, like sentences, and what they are trying to do now is learn written record of language. So they speak it, they say sentences, they say them correctly, they know schwa, they know diphthongs, they can say correctly curl, they can say correctly hair, they can say many things correctly, but now it's time for them to like transform their language from spoken to written, to break it down into pieces of language, like written language. That's what phonics is all about. If you have a student of this kind, remember that it will be easier for them to blend and segment. What is meant by blending and segmenting is technically blending is when you take separate phonemes and combine them together. Like you have k, t, you combine them in cat. It's a very simple example. I don't know why I used that one. Or maybe if you have, of course, I got a message from a person saying if it's possible to get the video. Yes, we are video recording this conference, and we will send you a link with this video recording and some other useful links, maybe tomorrow morning or anytime soon. But now let's get back to teaching reading. So blending is combining, segmenting is doing it separately. So if you imagine that there is a child who already knows how to say the word, he knows how to say, for example, water, yes, water. So if he or she knows that, it will be easier for him or her to repeat this word and break it down into smaller pieces like water, and break it down into separate phonemes. That's why it comes really, really natural to those who first learn spoken language and then start to write. Somebody's saying that you can't hear me. Strange. Can you give me a reaction if you can hear me, people? Anyone? Like thumbs up or down? Because I'm getting a message that there is. Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrew. Thank you for hearing me very well. Maybe somebody needs to check the settings on your device. Anyways, so if a person spoke English before learning to write it, their pronunciation is much, much more likely to be very natural and very Englishy, I want to say it this way. Very, like having very little accent, let's put it this way. The other case, let's go first to this one in the end, is learning reading before writing. This is also common with young learners. For example, you have the group of, I know, 6-year-olds or 5-year-olds, and they don't want to start writing yet because their motor skills on their fingers are very, very little, but they want to start reading, like seeing letters and being able to recognize them to match the graphemes with phonemes. When you have students like this, what teachers often do is they don't teach them letters at all. So sometimes they teach them sounds, basic sounds. So if you have a student like that, very often you will teach them, this is B. This is not letter B. You don't need to teach them B. You need to teach them B. And you will tell them that this is not letter S, but this is S. So that's how these students are usually taught. They are taught first simple, short vowels, short consonants, and once they are ready, if you are using this approach, it's super easy for you to teach the students to read their first CVC words. CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant, like nap, cat, lip, dip, and something like that. So you can teach those words with this approach very, very easily. And once again, they will not even know that such thing as B, C, D exists, only sounds. When should you teach the names of letters? That's a very good question. In this approach, if you have students like that, you first teach them up to the level where they have CVC. And after this, if you don't start teaching them letters, then it will be very challenging for them to manage diphthongs and digraphs. So once your students are able to read CVC, like cat, law, I don't know, something, bin, tin, can, pen, once they're ready with this, then you can start teaching them what the letters' names are. Because later when describing the diphthongs, you will need to name the letters. Like you have this letter here, this here, they combine and make a completely different sound. So up to CVC, you don't always need to teach them letters. But the most frequent approach that we have is learning reading along with writing and along with spoken language. So this often comes in the first grade of school. I am saying like regular school. Students come to class, they don't know English, maybe they know like 5, 6 words or maybe more words, like cat, dog, hello, goodbye, teacher, see you maybe, and stuff like that. And they are learning letters, they are learning sounds, and they are learning other language, like everything they can say. So in this way, it's the easiest to learn this letter-sound relationship. They always start with simple vowels and consonants, just one basic sound. So in this approach, you don't teach the students, so look, dear students, we are learning letter E. One sound for this is A, another one is E, another one is just silent. You don't teach all that, only one basic, most frequently used phoneme for this one, just one. And anyway, the students will still struggle with diphthongs and digraphs because it's a challenge for everybody. So once this step comes, it's just important to know how to introduce that to them. That's what we are going to be talking about next. Just a quick thing, in Green Country, we do use this approach. So they are learning spoken language and at the same time learning letters and sounds at the same time. So we don't teach sounds before letters, we teach them simultaneously. Let's continue. And but any of these approaches is technically phonics because you are teaching correlation between letters and sounds. As opposed to phonics, there are other approaches, and maybe they are not like whole approaches, but there are other methods of teaching students to read. Many supporters of something that is called whole language approach say that it's not necessary to teach them phonics. Like, we don't need to teach them. This is that's how you say the sound. But they just teach them with whole language. So technically, whole language approach, actually very, very interesting approach, and it might even work sometimes. This is when you teach students to read not by recognizing like every different phoneme in this word, but by just seeing a word as a whole piece and repeating it. This works very well with young learners who don't really read, but they memorize something as a picture. So imagine you have, this by the way, works very well with flashcards. Imagine you have flashcards, on one of them it says bin, and there is a picture of a bin. A picture of a bin. And the student sees a picture, the student knows this word bin, and just by looking at this, like let's say at this image, I want to say it this way, at this image of the word bin, they try to remember it. They see it many times and they remember this word as a picture. Whole words image, yes, whole words image, not B-I-N, but they see bin and they just remember that, oh, this looking thing looks like something that should be pronounced as bin. This works good, this works wonderful if you are teaching, first of all, English as first language. So the students have a very, very great variety of words that they can use, and they know words. If they don't know words and their vocabulary is very limited, then this is very likely not to work very well, unless you pre-teach the meaning of all these. Like, they must know what bin is, what cat is, what dog is, and all these kind of things. I'm not like either defending nor opposing this approach. It has the right to exist. We don't use it in the school where I teach in Green Country, but it might be effective for English first language or for students who have a great vocabulary. So, and just so you know how this works from later. So they are saying that you just read words as whole piece. So the supporters of this theory believe that you first read simple words as a whole piece, and later your brain teaches itself how to break it down into phonemes and how they correlate, which is also natural, but I think it's more natural for native speakers. And for those who speak absolutely different language with absolutely different correlation between letters and sounds, this is close to impossible, only for maybe very simple words. But once again, maybe this might work on your students. Why don't you give it a try? Other thing is using phonetic transcription. Do you guys, you can give me a reaction or write in chat. Do you have the experience of using phonetic transcription with your students? Do you use it frequently? Is it effective? Just like, you know, I remember back in the day when I went to school, we used to have this dictionary, and it used to look like a word in English, then in the middle some symbols, which is a transcription, and that was a translation for this word. Like, and we would write this for every single word that we learned, and our teacher would put it on the board, and we would copy this. Yeah, somebody uses it in their own experience. The thing, like here, I will be very subjective and very biased because it's my opinion. I personally find transcription in 21st century right now, especially with young learners, not effective, because it's not only remembering the letters, it's also remembering the sounds and these phonetic symbols that nobody will understand. Well, maybe some people will understand what they mean. It's very challenging with young learners, incredibly challenging. Just remember that the idea why we have the transcription is for the students to keep record of this language. So for example, at school, the teacher says, this word is, should be pronounced as floor, you know, not floor or not floor, like somebody might think who has background of speaking Ukrainian or Russian, but floor. And the students can't remember this word right away. They, of course, won't remember this word right away. They maybe will remember how to spell it, but maybe will forget how to pronounce it correctly. So that's why people created transcription, so that they can note down the record of pronunciation and then maybe pass this knowledge on to somebody, or open it at home and read it there again and like recreate it in your memory. But honestly, digital natives, students of 21st century, they tend not to use transcription. If there is a word that they don't know, well, what your students usually do is they open Google Translate, or just open Google, they type this word in, there is a little icon that looks like a megaphone, and they press on it and they hear it. So they just Google, and they can, also in many online dictionaries, you open online dictionary, of course there is a transcription, but next to the transcription, there is a megaphone symbol which you press and you hear it. So right now, when we have an ability of hearing any information and hearing how to pronounce something anytime, the need for transcription is like, it's decreasing. It's like diminishing, I would say, because there is no such need. We have other ways. Actually, interesting thing, I personally think that we are now on the path of losing a written record of language at all. People nowadays, they tend to not write something, but to make a video message, or to write an audio, like a voice message. So also, when people are trying to find some information, they don't try to find a book or some article where they can read it. They find a video where people will tell them what to do. So not only the need for transcription is going down, I believe the need for written record of language at all is going down, and I am anticipating that maybe in the nearest future we will be using only spoken language and records of spoken language. But this is just my opinion, and might not happen. Somebody's saying gradually replacing good old IPN in modern online dictionaries. Yes, so we are replacing it with just like this little listen to it icon. Very well. Okay, so transcription, once again, you might be using it, but my suggestion, just try not to overload your students, especially young ones, with all these things. They might see it, but it's more important for them to hear what it is rather than seeing it. All right, next one. So just a few words how, oops, sorry, that's the wrong slide. Just a few words how we do this in Green Country. We have our, we are not having something very special. We just have not our own approach, but maybe a combination of a few different approaches of how to be teaching that and which levels it comes at. So in Green Country, we have developed books, particularly for Green Country, but we are sharing them now with people from the outside as well, once we already have tested them. So we do have our textbooks in which we do have our phonics lessons. So it starts like that. In the very beginning, when the students come, when the students come to Green Country, the very first level, which they, if they are meant for the very first level, they first study only spoken language. Like they learn how to say hello, goodbye, open, close. They learn to identify words and say the corresponding words, no writing. And at the same time, one by one, they are learning the alphabet and corresponding basic sounds. Again, we're only talking about simple sounds, not every single grapheme that that it can represent. After that, once the students learn the whole entire alphabet and all the basic sounds, the next stage is digraphs. They study some of them as well in their phonics lesson and chants. After that come diphthongs, and after that we consider the students are more or less able to read. Of course, they continue developing it, but this is the basic algorithm. I will show you some textbooks and how it comes there. So when the students only study the alphabet, this is an example of a video which follows their learning. It's very, very short. They have many of those, so I will just show you that.
Letter V sounds fan. Letter W sounds window. Letter X sounds fox. VWX.
Yeah, so technically, oh yeah, it goes faster, sorry.
Letter W sounds window. Letter X sounds fox. VWX.
Yeah, so this is a very simple example of a song. I wouldn't even call it a song, more like a chant, but songs like that, we develop songs like that for every single letter in English alphabet. They always go as a combination of 3 letters, and that's how the students remember them. As you can see, they only study the basic sound that is represented by the letters, not many other things. But then comes the next stage. Okay, I will show you also how it's represented in the textbook. We have developed a textbook which goes along to some other resources that students in the first grade use. It's called ABC book, where students learn the alphabet. So not only they sing the song, they also have some other things. I will show it to you here. Yes, so the book looks like that. Let's take a look at some units. As you can see, they study every unit, they study 3 different letters and they remember them. So here is a basic type of tasks. You see, it's mostly about graphing and remembering how to write these letters, but along with some listenings, like, here for this matching activity would be a listening like apple. The students would be asked to match. And again, this is a very, very simple combination of exercises for students who are 6 years old. They are very young, they don't know much, but this is how they study. So at this stage, they only learn letters and the basic sound that is represented here, like d, dog, p, frog, and things like that. That's the first stage. The next stage is when the students get a little older, or maybe even like technically next semester after this, they review these letters again in something that is called, very similar cover, something that is called Green Country Reader. It's a book that goes like level up over that. Oops, and looks like, sorry, just close the needed link. There we go. It has a slightly different phonemes that are studied here. So let's look, for example, here we have, in the beginning, of course, they need to review what they learned. So in the beginning, they review basic short sounds, simple consonants, and simple vowels. Here they already have some combination like p, t, o, a, and then they combine them. So there is a little blending at this stage. That's where we have a little bit of that blending, and they continue. As they proceed, they continue learning more difficult letters and more difficult combinations. For example, for me, the challenging one comes maybe in unit 13, where they have ooh in book, room, and some other sounds go just a revision. But once again, if this type of activities is supported by audio where the students can hear, then the need for transcription just disappears, it goes away, we don't need it at all. But that is only one level. Here they start learning some combination of sounds, some digraphs. Here is no digraphs, but here you can see that there are some complicated sounds. Here's a diphthong for cake, game, and other things. And after that comes the next level. I'm sorry, it will take a moment for me to find a correct page. After that comes the next level when they get deeper into diphthongs. But again, you can't teach diphthongs all at once. There has to be some kind of step-by-step action. For example, let's look here. Sharing again. This is, I'm showing you the extract from a book for students aged about 6-7 years old. Usually it's second semester of first grade. So as you can see here, there is a little more complicated approach. So particularly this lesson is aimed at learning the difference between sound E and A here. So they listen and repeat tap, cat, lamp, tape, late, mate, and that's how they remember. So once again, if they see many times during the lesson that this magical letter E at the end makes some magic and the sound in between becomes different, eventually they just memorize it as a pattern. And again, the key is chanting along. So the students not only read it, they chant it along with the audio, like, I can see a bat in a cave. Look at the cat. It's very brave. It's kind of like a poem, not perfectly rhythmical, but chants is, in my opinion, the key to very effective memorizing. Like, I can see a bat in a cave. Look at the cat. It's very brave. And once the students color different sounds in different colors, they will be remembering for the future that this is how the diphthong works in this situation. But again, as you can see here, it's only one usage of sound A, of diphthong A. There will be more coming in the next level. Once the students continue and go to the next level, they have an even more complicated step. They start learning those sounds, but in different combinations. That's the hard part, to be learning them in different combinations. I will show you a little video now. What I mean by this is the same sound, the same diphthong, but now they start comparing different spellings, if you can say so, of different graphemes. I'm sorry, couldn't recall the term. Different graphemes for the same phoneme. Just let's take a look very quickly. At this stage, they already have a more complicated page. For example, here, this is a part of a lesson where students are learning how the same phoneme is represented by different graphemes. Okay, for example, sound A is sometimes made by these letters, sometimes made by these letters, and sometimes by these letters. But yet, it is the same sound A. It's nothing more difficult than sound A. And of course, it's important for students to hear. It's rainy today, I am playing with my toy train, and stuff like that. Listening and repeating chants is, like, I know, effectiveness at its best when it comes to phonics. Usually doing the page like this takes about like 10-15 minutes during the lesson, but improves reading by far. And of course, to support this, we've developed some videos as well. I would like to share one with you. So this is just for better memorization. One moment. Here the diphthong is oi, not A, but for A we also have one.
O-Y, oi, toy, boy, joy, destroy, oyster, cowboy, enjoy. O-I, oi, oil, coin, noise, boil, voice, point, foil.
All right. So very simple example of something that we use during our lessons. Nothing difficult, very basic things. But the difference at this level in comparison with the other one is that the students already have some prior knowledge. I'm sorry, I can't get out of here. The students already have some prior knowledge of one grapheme for this sound, and they are ready to be differentiating and like learning another layer on top of that of how to be pronouncing these words, which is extremely important for them. So once again, the approach is very simple. First, you learn some words just to get you speaking. Along with that, you learn alphabet with basic simple sounds. After this, you start learning more complicated sounds like sh, th, u, which is represented by two letters, so that would be digraphs. And after this, simple diphthongs, and then combination of different graphemes for the same diphthong. This is a very broad approach to learning this. I'm pretty certain you're using a similar one. So in the end, I just wanted to share with you some resources that are not by Green Country, but which I find useful sometimes for you to be using. We will again, of course, include these links when we send an email to you. But here are some basic tools that you can use. These are the websites that have resources to help you with, not you, your students, with learning phonics. This one is very simple. You can find for different grades, softschools.com. They are downloadable, or you can generate them. For example, I would like a game, or oh, let's look here. O and oi phonic sound practice. Very good. Okay, and I should write here soil, oi. It generates a simple game. Oh, a good one, you are saying. A good phoneme or a good website. Soil. Very good. What do I write here? Oi. or no, I'm not correct, but you can be using this. Another thing that you can practically generate some kind of a game or a flashcard for any level. Also, there is another website, phonicsblue.com. There is some version of it. A good one, grammarly interfered. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but anyways, so here a part of that is available if you have a free account, but you can also subscribe and buy a more advanced version of that. For example, you can play some games. Oh, here's a flashcard game with some kind of sounds here. What I like by that is you can generate them automatically and they are very easy to use. Some part is available for free. So here, include graphemes from, I don't know. Let's go. Let's go. I really chose the wrong one. I'm sorry, not following how to play this game. The ones I've chosen before made much more sense, but it does have some good games, mostly for different levels. Again, I chose phase 3. You can choose other phases depending on what level your students are at. But my favorite is this one. Education.com has a whole special section for phonics, and the games here are just amazing. They are very graphically vivid. They are well designed. I, for example, want to try this one. This one is for digraphs. Digraphs. Again, digraphs are those sounds that are, of course, we are sending all of these links to you with the presentation and with the video recording of this conference. So again, digraphs are those sounds that are represented by combination of 2 different letters. So let's take a look at this one. Let's even try to play this. I love that one very much. Okay, play. You need to listen attentively. Maybe you need to assist your students with this, maybe for the instruction part. Okay. So and listening attentively here is important. You see, the design is perfect, how it's browsed.
Use this X-ray vision camera to help Officer Ice Cream find words. Click to take a picture. Let's go. Find the picture that starts with ch.
Ch. Okay, so they pronounce this word. Maybe you will need to explain this to your students at a little slower pace, but ch, and they need to be hearing the sound. So once you aim your camera at something, it will tell you the word.
Wheel.
No.
Whale. Ship.
Ship. No, not that's
Whale.
not what I need. Not this.
Wheel. Thimble. Chain. Chain.
Chain. Again. So I heard in the beginning sound ch. Now I see chain. I made fun of that. Okay, very well.
Find the picture that starts with sh.
Sh.
Whale. Wheel. Cheese. Shirt. Cheese. Cheese. 3. Shirt.
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 Okay, good. I'm so clever as for second
Find the
year.
picture that starts with
second grader.
Thorn. 3. 3.
Okay.
Chess. Thorn. Thermos. Thorn.
Okay. It continues like that.
Find the picture that starts with hua. Sheep. Thumb. Wheat. Wheel. Wheat.
Okay. So you continue like that with your students or without your students. It's only one example of the games. On education.com, there are tons of them, all different kinds of them. So that's called digraphs photo shoot. You can find something for digraph smudging if you are learning digraphs. Maybe you're not learning digraphs. Maybe you're learning something different. You can find a game for many things. Here, also for digraphs. It depends on what you're teaching them, but the resources for teaching phonics online are like unlimited. You can find them everywhere. The most important thing for teaching phonics, I want you to remember, is that it's important for students to hear and to listen. Transcription isn't necessary as long as they hear the correct pronunciation of these words. I hope you will be having some great experiences teaching phonics to your students, teaching reading to different students, either they are young learners or grown-ups. I want to thank everybody who joined this video conference, a webinar this evening, and dedicated the whole hour to learning something new, or maybe just trying to see how other people do it as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Once again, tomorrow morning or anytime soon, you will be getting an email with video recording of the conference, with all the links that were used in the presentation itself, and maybe some other useful links that you might find helpful in your teaching experience. So thank you, everyone, again, for being here with me. See you maybe some other time if you will be joining more webinars by Green Country. If not, thank you anyway for being with me all this time. I hope you all have a good evening. Goodbye. That was Ira with you from Green Country.